Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Sound Health Options Show for April 6, 2014 with Richard Talk to Me Guy Olson and Sherry Edwards. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning and welcome back, everyone. We have such a loyal audience. I love it. And then they send all the information out to other people when we do a great show. And then we have hundreds of people listening to the archive, probably 100 times more people who listen to our archive that come in and play with us on chat as we simultaneously broadcast from Blog Talk Radio, and you can tune in there at 347-850-1407, or you can go to our site, Sound Health Options, go to radio, and that's what we're looking at for those of you who are with us on WebEx watching the broadcast. Do you have chat going over there at Blog Talk, Richard?
Oh yes, I've got chat going over here. We've got chat on the WebEx feed, which if people want to get to, for those listening on Blog Talk Radio, you can go to soundhealthoptions.com, click on the radio tab, then click on the Blog Talk Radio tab under that, and scroll down that page, and the link is at the bottom of toward the bottom of that page. And right now that link is not clickable because of an issue with the web hosting. You have to copy and then paste that link into your browser, but it will take you into the video feed that Sherry is talking about.
Great. Well, welcome all of you from the studios of Sound Health and the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology. We're a registered 501c3 nonprofit, the largest alternative research, alternative medicine, alternative energy center in Ohio. What we do here centers around the sounds of your voice and how those frequencies can be used as a diagnostic and treatment modality to help the body obtain optimal health from an innate perspective. What we do here is look at the idea of homogeneous groups, say a group that has measles or a group that have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. And we know now that those groups have similar, sometimes identical anomalies in their voice. Okay, we are sponsored today by our fibromyalgia software and our ImmuneRise software. That's going to be helping you look at, do you have symptoms of fibromyalgia and what do you do about it? We do have a 2-day class coming up on April 10th and 11th. 2 days long with software and all that included. And if you will agree to give us back data, or if you are a fibromyalgia sufferer, say that word, we will provide you a complete scholarship for this $1,200 course. We love what we're doing here. Other people are picking it up. AT&T has announced that bioacoustics is the medicine of the future, and I love that idea. We have a very special guest who's written incredible books and does workshops, and Richard will introduce her in just a few minutes, but I want to make an exciting announcement. We have been featured in a video, well, I guess it's a documentary, called The Business of Disease. I was trying to think of some of the people in there. Jacob Lieberman, who does a lot with Alternative Health and Eyes. Amit Gawande, that is part of the Alternative Health doctoral and master's program that you can do online. But there are about 8 or 10 of us that are featured in this. And we are going to do a premiere opening May 24th. It will be at about 7 in the evening. If you're interested in coming to the gala, let us know. We will be serving free popcorn, no admission fee, but you'll get to see this idea of the business of disease and how alternative medicine is taking up the slack and really supporting people and their health rather than supporting pocketbooks and stock prices. We have a keynote. Richard, do you want to read the keynote? You want me to do it?
I would like you to read it because you add little things in as you're reading it. Things pop up and you have to add them in. You can't help yourself, and I love that.
You want to describe what the keynote is?
The keynote is this thing that I am all enamored with. It's a cosmic energy, or it's a cosmic note that is created by the cosmos, or the alignment of everything that's out there, and it comes to the planet, and people, Sherry software picks it up and analyzes it, and other people with acronyms, the NSA wouldn't know what to do with it. They're probably gathering the data for it. And it's this amazing thing where it almost always kind of lines up with what's going on a few days before, or like yesterday I will have gotten calls from people who are talking to me. I know some of the buzzwords here in the keynote today. And it's just this amazing thing that's like 5 to 6 day thing or frequency that's emanated by the cosmos towards the Earth. And Sherry does this wonderful analysis of it. I love the keynote.
Richard, you mentioned the NSA. I wish they did pick this up and work with it because it might explain a lot of behaviors of people. But NASA really does monitor this, and that's where we get our information about it. It's what controls the tides and sunspots and that kind of thing. So we have titled this one, Muscle Energy Stabilization, the color for the, today's sound, and we do like 3 days on either side of the sound. The color is the note of C, and in ancient times they would call that the astrological sign of Aries. So, beginning Sunday, dystonia 3, a neurological movement disorder associated with Parkinson's, comes into power. And this is on our site. For any of you who go to our site, there is just a keynote link. So you can look there, and we put up little strange things about your body. Like you have a whole pharmacy within us, and we can create anything that we need. So just things like that. But you can read along with this if you go to our site, soundhealthoptions.com. This is the good part. The artificial sweetener aspartame is a major contributor to dystonia 3 because aspartame competes with glutamine, glutathione, and glutamate, all amino acids that feed the nerves and signaling pathways of the muscles. Dystonia involves sustained muscle contractions. This is what Michael J. Fox has, by the way. So today he might be way worse because the frequencies that support this genetic anomaly are stronger. Dystonia involves sustained muscle contractions causing twisting and repetitive movements of abnormal postures. This disorder may be hereditary or caused by other factors such as birth-related or other physical trauma, infections, poisoning, especially lead poisoning, reactions to pharmaceutical drugs, and neuroleptics. Treatment is difficult and has been limited to minimizing the symptoms of disorder. Since there is no conventional cure available, I should have read that all in one thing. Treatment is difficult and has been limited because there's no conventional treatment available except the novel work being done at Sound Health and the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology. And we have backed this off several times by getting the body to use something called BHMT and trimethylglycine. So if you'd like to know more about that, we have a lot of videos on Vimeo, with a lot of videos on our own site. Actually, we have 2 free videos for people under download. One is Miracles of Non-Medicine, all the doctors we work with, and the other is Breaking the Sound Barrier of Disease. Associated with the dystonia stress, the nerve factors for muscles comes into stress on Monday. This may not be a good time to elevate your exercise efforts. Hydroxyproline, a biochemical, helps support connective tissue, which is also connected to muscle and joint stress. Mineral stress, zinc. And this is going to be in stress because of the bioavailable zinc as well as the element zinc. It's going to be in stress in the next 7 days or so, a little longer than other biochemicals. So zinc, which is associated with insulin and the body's ability to heal itself. This may be the cause of the loss of limbs for diabetic sufferers. Pure encapsulation makes a very potent liquid zinc. Pure, P-U-R-E, encapsulation. You can probably find them online. The amino acids leucine and isoleucine are now in stress. Both of these nutrients support blood sugar and emotional stabilization. Both are essential to replenish muscles and energy and can be found in eggs, lentils, cashews, almonds, and chicken. So if you're experiencing something and can't quite put your handle on why, just go back and blame the keynote, the frequencies coming to the universe. Richard, what did your friends experience when that's related to this?
Well, I did have people that were having, odd. I've actually had a very unusual thing, at least to me, but now with the dystonia, it kind of fits in with neurological and muscle issues. I've had a couple of people who called me who were complaining about pain in their feet. And that kind of, but in an unusual way, not like from walking, just like crampy, tight, this kind of, neurological confusion is what I would call it. And I suggested to them, partially based on Stephanie Seneff's research about Epsom salt, using Epsom salt soaps, and I got positive results. But I had people with like this glutathione-based neuromuscular stress. So it's right there.
And it does cause...
It's amazing.
It does cause stiffening. We had a lady in, and if she would point her finger, that whole finger and thumb would get very stiff. And that was the first beginnings of dystonia with her. But we helped her with trimethylglycine, which you can get at your health food store for a temporary relief. It's under the name Bintane. Okay, we have a couple of more announcements, then we want to get to our exciting guests. Have you guys heard that Obamacare reached the 7.1 million mark, and there was so much going on with that? Well, Richard, how they did it? You want to know how they did it?
Of course.
They went in and signed up all the prisoners. That's not funny, but it's such a jerk around. They couldn't make 7 million with the people who had choice, so they had to go grab the prisoners and stick them in there. I even have an article of that. Jail enrolling inmates to Obamacare to pass hospital costs on to the U.S. government. So there's about, I looked it up, there's about 11 million people. That's a lot, 11 million people in jail. So they went to Ohio, Illinois, and one other state and signed up all the prisoners, and that's how they got this great jump. I mean, prisoners didn't sign up, and they have no income, so it had to be the prison administration. But how clever. Comment, Richard?
It's all,
You're gnashing your teeth.
It's an amazing spin out there.
Absolutely. I'd like to mention last week, because a couple people have asked on chat here. Last week on Blog Talk, we had a show about energy medicine, and we had a couple of people on who took our course and described what was going on. And I think it was Richard, not you, Richard, but another Richard, who experienced our little back box. Now, not black, back box, little back box. And they want to know how they can get that little back box that Richard was talking about that took away his back pain. You can contact our office, or you can contact any bioacoustic practitioner in your community. So that's how you get a little back box. And it doesn't work if you had operations or something like that. We need to do your vocal print separately. It only works, like stress sitting around doing things like that. The other thing that we've been following and people have been asking about, is there any update on the Justina Pellier disaster where Massachusetts took over this kid? Yes, there is. Massachusetts, who took full custody of this kid because they said Tufts University made a wrong diagnosis, and this was only in this kid's mind, and the parents were going along with it and treating it a somatic disease. But they took the custody away from the parents, for those of you who are not familiar, and gave it to the state. They've not been allowed to see, she's now 15, they've not been allowed to see her alone for 14 months, which I think is just absolutely incredible. But here is the awful, awful, awful thing about this. Massachusetts, who took custody based on the fact that they were using a wrong diagnosis, took this child back across state lines to see her original doctor at Tufts and did not tell the parents that this was happening. Now, they blamed this on the parents, that they got a wrong diagnosis. They've had this kid for 14 months, and she went from a strong kid skating to a kid in a wheelchair that can't feel her legs from her waist down. And Massachusetts, who took custody, now slipped her back across the border. The parents and the parents' lawyer are filing kidnapping charges. Maybe they'll get their child back. And if you think there has to be something else wrong with this, or wrong with these parents, there isn't. The original doctor who saw her was at Tufts, and then that doctor moved over across town to Massachusetts General. They needed Justina to be seen, so they took her to this new hospital where her old doctor was, and the new hospital took custody, saying this was all in her head, and it was done by a doctor who has an NIH grant about somatic disease. So there's really some bad stuff going on here. The only way we got to know about it at all, because the judge had gag orders on the parents and wouldn't allow them to talk about it. Well, the father went on national news and talked about it, and now they're finally getting some movement, but they've got, they want to arrest him for not complying with the gag order. So, horrible stuff. But what all of this has led to is that we're now doing a project on mitochondrial dysfunction to see what we can do about it bioacoustically. I think that's all of the announcements, and we're 2 minutes behind. So, Richard, would you introduce our very special guest?
I certainly will. I'm going to run this promotional piece about the Guardian Network because I'm such a fan of Guardian, and the workshops you do once a month with the Guardians where they get free software and information and network together is really such a powerful core. As everybody knows, I'm a big fan of the Guardian. So we'll be right back.
Have you had enough? Our civil and health rights are being ignored at every turn. More than ever, alternative healthcare services are needed. Please accept our invitation to be a part of the renovation of healthcare in America. Guardian Party members receive free software, free online classes, free monthly newsletters, free forum access. For more about health for the people, by the people, visit us at www.guardiansofthepeople.com.
Absolutely, go visit that link. I'm a big fan, of the Guardians Network. I think they're awesome. Okay, our guest today, award-winning author Deb Shapiro of Be the Change, is a mindfulness, meditation, and yoga expert, coach, and corporate consultant. Deb is a featured blogger for the HuffingtonPost.com and Oprah.com. She's authored 16 books on personal development and meditation and social action, many published in over 17 languages. She's led meditation retreats, personal development programs worldwide for over 25 years. Deb is here today to talk with us about her book, Your Body Speaks Your Mind, Decoding the Emotional, Psychological, and Spiritual Messages that Underlie Illness. Welcome, Deb. Good morning.
Good morning.
Wow. For somebody who's in a mindfulness state so much, you're incredibly prolific.
Well, I'm old enough to have had a fairly full life.
We are looking.
I have to ask, I want to ask right out of the gate, how did you get to now, in the sense of, how did the journey begin that led you into, the mindfulness world, I guess I would call it?
Well, actually, it's a very clear story to me. I was 15. This is a long, long time ago. And I was a very wayward teenager in London, where I grew up. And my older brothers and sisters were gone. It was the Easter break. And my mother was not about to leave me in London on my own, but she had become a Buddhist and was going to a Buddhist meditation retreat for 3 days. Now, I was sort of used to this. I knew some of the people. They used to come through the house occasionally. She used to teach English to Tibetan Rinpoches as they came over from Tibet. So I was sort of used to it, and it was meant to be only 3 days, so I just thought, okay, 3 days in the countryside, I'll do it. I knew she wouldn't. I had no choice. And so we went, and the story goes, and it's true, she stayed her 3 days, and I stayed 10. And as far as I was concerned, that was it. It was the answer to everything I had been questioning throughout my life. And even at just 15, I don't think I understood a word of what was being taught. But sitting in meditation, especially in the evening with candlelight, I was completely gone. I was in another dimension. And it grounded me and brought me into my body and awoke a real awareness of quiet, of stillness. And that's never left me. So that was my beginning.
Deb, we are looking at Ed and Deb Shapiro's website, so if there's anything that you would like to point us to, feel free as we munch through here looking at interesting things.
Certainly. Yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I read some of your materials, and you talk about that. I think about that as such an interesting thing that you found such a state of, peace. And I've done meditation. I've sort of wrestled with meditation most of my life. Wrestling meaning I always feel like I'm not doing it right. That kind of wrestling. But, to find that state of quiet, because I know one of your books is titled Going Out of Your Mind, and it always makes me chuckle because, we all think of going out of your mind as one thing, but as I relate it to knowing your work, I think going out of your mind is really such a powerful thing. It's exactly
well, that's why the subtitle is that's why it's called Going Out of Your Mind, the Only Place to Be, because it's really, as you say, it's a sort of double entendre. It's like, yes, we can go out of our mind and we can find a stillness. We can get away from that extraordinarily busy and critical and fearful and worried and falsely elated mind, and actually find a level of peace and quiet that isn't normally there. It's beneath that, as it were. So when we called the book Going Out of Your Mind, what we meant was, obviously, being able to leave behind the discursive mind and come into a place of stillness within ourselves, which, lucky for me, and apologies that Ed is not with us today, but between the two of us, we've been on this journey for a very long time and thoroughly enjoy the quiet spaces.
We're looking at your book on Amazon, and there's over 40 customer reviews. That's a lot. And some of them, I love what they're saying and would like you to explain some of this all of your thoughts and feelings gets translated into chemicals that fire off throughout your body, altering the chemical composition and behavior of your cells. Is that too big of a topic?
Believe it or not, Deepak Chopra maybe put it even simpler, which was we cannot have fear without adrenaline, and we can't have adrenaline without fear. So in other words, every state of being, every emotion, every feeling also does have a chemical quality within the body. So when we feel fear, for instance, we release adrenaline, or excitement, or anticipation. There's a certain sort of sense of tension in the body, and all of this will be related to the type of the hormones and chemicals being released, such as adrenaline. And so, you know, it's very interesting. Then we have something like stress. It doesn't just release adrenaline, it also releases cortisol, which has a different effect on us and actually makes us numb. So you could be, for instance, on the front line of a war and not even be aware that you've been hurt, because different chemicals are being released in your body to deal with that situation that actually render you numb to the depth of that, the difficulty you're dealing with, so that you can deal with it. And so we can relate this to everything. I mean, for instance, we feel sad and tears come. Well, how come, what makes the tears come? You know, even if we're feeling happy and tears come, that's because there's been a release of a chemical that's related to sadness, that relates to the tear ducts and the cells in the tear ducts and tells them to release tears. I think the most extraordinary thing for me is how instantaneous it is. You know, you think about having a thought, and a thought can take a few seconds, but actually the relationship between a feeling and the response of the body is immediate.
Well, these have to be neuropeptides, I would think.
There are many forms of chemicals. Neuropeptides, absolutely, yes.
How, and I've never been able to get anybody to answer this, but how does the originating thought get into the peptide to carry it to wherever it needs to go to cry or whatever?
Well, a good question, but I mean, this is the beauty of the body, in as much as every single cell in the body is interwired with every other cell. And so if something happens in one part of the body, the rest of the body knows about it. So you have a sad thought, and the tear ducts know about it.
And
it's a system within ourselves that we have no direct contact with, but we can become aware of it.
I guess I asked the wrong question. Where does the originating thought come from to get into the peptide to send a signal out to the body?
So you mean, what is the origin of man?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. I mean, where does thought come from? That's what you're asking.
Yes.
Couldn't tell you. I'm not a scientist, thank goodness.
Okay, well, I tried. I wanted to get that answered.
Well, I mean, you can answer that as well. Where does our thought come from? Ask yourself and find what answer comes. Where does thought come from? Where do these thoughts, feelings, emotional responses, where do all these come from? I think scientists have been trying to find this for all eternity.
I think it's electrical potential and maybe magnetic balance in the body. I'm not sure yet. I do have this idea about hearing, that we have a sound that comes out of our ear. They've measured an otoacoustic emission. And I think as people's voice hits that sound wave coming out of your ear, we have learned how to interpret that. But I think that comes from some kind of a magnetic moment. They call it in electricity. And certainly there's electrical systems running around in our body. So from that magnetic resonance that carries a signal to the electricity and controls it, I think that's where it is. I just can't prove it yet.
Okay.
It seems to me, my view from over here is that it seems like we're a pile of experiences that all stack up. And a long time ago, Sarge Garibaldi wrote a book about the mind, looking at it from a very clinical perception about triggers, having to do with, like, he was writing about Vietnam vets and talking about how they would come back to the States and they would, have an incident where a series of sound, they might go off in a park and try and shoot somebody or have a bad reaction, have a trigger. And it was a series of experiences where they would hear, they'd be in a park and they'd hear the sound of a swing and children squealing, and then maybe a car would backfire, and that the end result would then cause them to be triggered to have a reaction. And so I feel like we're an accumulation of experiences that we gather in our, world. And then that's what leads to the cascade. Amazing thing in the endocrine system where there's this system, like you say, we have a thought which takes a few seconds, but then that somehow, that mystery gap that I don't rock, causes something to be knocked over in the hormone world, and those hormones go out instantaneously to all the cells. All of the little cells and their receptor sites go, wow! Or, they cry. It's an amazing
I think
thing.
I think what really fascinates me maybe more is how, as we open our hearts to each other, as we open our hearts to compassion and awareness of other, how that influences our response. So, for instance, one person might have a compassionate response to somebody in pain, and someone else might laugh at them if they haven't developed that level of compassion or understanding. So it's obviously more than just a magnetic or electrical response. There is intelligence involved. There is awareness involved. There's a beautiful story of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who's from Vietnam and often gets letters from people who are fleeing from Vietnam and they're escaping on boat, and had one letter from a family who were on boat, and they're often these boats are attacked by pirates, and this family, this boat was, and the pirate captain raped their teenage daughter on the boat, and she was so distraught she threw herself overboard and drowned. And so this couple wrote to Thich Nhat Hanh to ask him for advice. And with being the nature of the being he is, he went into deep meditation for 3 days and wrote a long poem as a result. But the essence of the poem was that if he too had been born in the same village as that sea captain, as that pirate, he too would not have had a heart that was open enough to realize the level of depth of pain and suffering he was causing. And so in a way, we are all responsible for that sea captain and for that level of closed-heartedness. Whereas when you do open your heart to become more aware of pain and suffering that you may be causing or that others are causing. And so this level of awareness of pain and suffering to me is born in the heart, it's of the heart, and is of a different nature to that which is of thinking that is in the mind. So I'm not sure I'm going with this, but I'm just aware that the human being is so much more than we realize. That as we enter into the heart, or as we enter into silence as well, there's an expansion of awareness that takes place way beyond the physical form and way beyond what is happening, with chemicals or hormones or neuropeptides or any of those things, but into a space of awareness of energy and of movement and of love. So for me, that trying to understand where does thought come from, where do we come from, is almost irrelevant, almost, but only because who we are is so much more than any of that, and can be so much more. When we let go of who we are completely, just as Thich Nhat Hanh did when he went into meditation for 3 days, and just let go of yourself and enter into an awareness that sees it all. And I guess that's what motivates me more than anything else. I'm not sure I'm going with this at all, but
when you meditate, do you feel like there's a splitting of your mind?
A what?
A splitting?
No, I can't hear you.
When you meditate, do you feel like there's a splitting of your mind and you're living in this reality and you're alive, but is there an alternative reality there? I mean,
No,
how do you describe?
No splitting. Just an expansion, not a splitting. Total expansion. And the expansion is such that when you, and many people experience this without realizing what's going on. My mother experienced this many years ago, before I think I was even born, when she was just doing the dishes in her kitchen, and she suddenly heard a bird call. And she became the bird. And she became the sound of the bird call. And that's what, to me, what happens in meditation often is, and not always by any means, but often, is a sense of boundarylessness. Your sense of yourself, your boundaries dissolve. And you become just simply one with everything. You are everything. It's not one with everything. You are everything. You are the bird. You are the chair you're sitting on. You are the wind blowing. You are the whatever may be going on around you. There is no separation because your boundaries have completely dissolved. And so it's not a splitting, it's an expansion. And generally, very gently, as towards the end of the time you need to move, you will come back into yourself, as it were. But there remains an awareness of everything around you. I was talking to my mother the other week, and she's 90 now, and she's, since I was a teenager, she's been involved with Buddhism and meditation and good things. And she said, she's reached a point where she can just sit there and look at a table and become aware of the essence of the table and become aware that she is that same essence. And she and the table just sort of merge. And it was just so lovely to know that even at 90, she can still be there. She can experience that and has no fear whatsoever of whatever might come, because she knows that it's just the dissolving of the ego. Because it's the ego that creates those boundaries around us.
Is the reason you wrote your book so that you can explain this to people and have them have the ability to live sort of in both worlds? I have this issue that in being open and wanting people to understand there's other dimensions, and they look at you like you're just a nutball.
Well, I guess the difference between us is I would never say another dimension. I would say an expanded dimension. I would say this world that we're in is far greater than we perceive with a naked eye. It is far, far greater than just the tree outside, and yet at the same time, it is just the tree. Everything is contained within that tree. So that's why, there's lovely phrases like chop wood, carry water, just, get on with your day. And within every single moment of every day is that potential, is that space for us to enter into the quiet and enter into that merging with all things. So there's no separation.
Do you have a place for people to...
Ed and I were teaching yoga in Scotland, and this was a long, long time ago, but then Scotland, it tends to be all women and the husbands poo-poo it, and so we created pub yoga for the husbands, because the wives would come to the yoga class and the husbands would go to the pub, and so they were doing pub yoga. And so what we were trying to do, and I think most of the women got it, was there's no separation. Whatever we're doing is just what we're doing. There's no separate meditation, separate dimension. There's no, once you enter it, become aware of that expansiveness, then there's no separation whatsoever in whatever you're doing. It's all a part of the whole. So whatever dimension, and certainly, I agree with you in terms of people often think of meditation as, weird and looking up your own navel or whatever. Simply because they haven't experienced that. It's totally understandable. That if you haven't experienced something, then you have no understanding of it. And so it's down to, your own ego is going to defend you by saying, oh, well, it's not for me, that's just weird. And that you're okay without it. Of course, that's what the ego does. And then as soon as you do experience it, that can change. And you go, oh, wait a minute, maybe, it's not so bad after all.
Do you have a place for people to start seeking or finding this?
Just right where they are. Absolutely right where you are. It's so easy to start. Hopefully you're sitting down already, and you just simply become aware of your breathing. All you need to, natural flow of breath. Don't try to make the breathing longer or shorter. Just naturally, your body is breathing for you. It's a totally automatic function. All you have to do, become aware of it. Become aware of it for a few minutes. Become aware of it for 10 minutes. Become aware for 15 minutes. Whatever feels comfortable. All you're doing is just sitting upright. You might find it easier if your eyes are closed. Some prefer to have their eyes very slightly open to keep them more awake, but not looking at anything. And you're just literally flowing with your breathing. You're not doing anything other than becoming aware of your breath. If you drift off into thinking, then fine. Come back to your breathing. And all you're doing is you're internalizing your attention, because that's what your breathing does. By watching it, you are coming into yourself. Normally we're very externalized. And even now you're listening to this radio show. You're externalized in your awareness. And so what watching the breath does is it just brings you back into an internalized state. And eventually, as you keep doing it, and it does take time and take practice, but eventually the thoughts begin to dissolve. The thoughts begin to become less frequent. You are distracted less by your own mind. And you become you just become stiller. It just naturally brings you into a place of stillness. All you need to do from there, doors wide open wide. You can do all sorts of things. But once you just really establish that awareness of your breath, that's mindfulness. It's mindfulness of breathing. And that's all we need to do to start us off.
For the abandoned mother with 3 children and she can't pay her bills, and is there any written literature that would give her, I want to go back to your book and what the book presents to people. Do you have on your website things that would give her the courage to be able to sit down and just concentrate on her breathing?
We have CDs and the books available. We don't have anything written on the website on how to meditate. Perhaps we should. It's a good point. We certainly have books and CDs. And our book, Be the Change, How Meditation Can Transform You and the World, was aimed at making it very accessible and real. We spoke to well over 100 different meditation teachers and practitioners, and took out anyone who spoke about it theoretically. We just wanted their experience and how relevant that was to anyone reading the book, just how what meditation meant to come alive, what it was like in living meditation in the real world. And so that's what our book Be the Change is about, and certainly includes full instructions on how to meditate. And we have 3 CDs on how to meditate. But even if you are a single mother with unpaid bills, there is probably about 5 minutes in a day where you're not doing anything, but maybe just putting your feet up, or just taking a moment, even watching television, or 5 minutes before you go to sleep, or 5 minutes when you get up in the morning before the kids get up, or when they've gone to school. And you can just take 5 minutes, not a lot, out of 24 hours, 5 minutes to just sit quietly. And what is amazing is how soon those 5 minutes not only become 10, but also make it easier to do other things. You feel less pressured and are able to cope with difficulties more easily. It gives you a little space, and it enables you to see everything more clearly in perspective, because you're giving your mind, normally your mind is going so fast, it's very hard to separate and just sit back and take a breath from it. And that's all we're doing, just taking a breath from the madness of the mind.
Before the show, we were talking a little bit, and there was a story that you were going to tell us that Richard asked you to reserve until we got on the air.
We were talking about animals, so nothing to do with what I'm saying right now, but animals in terms of, that generally speaking, they're so spontaneous and so in the present that it can make us feel, help us be more present. But it reminded me of a Tibetan story, not a story, but a Tibetan teaching, that until we open the heart, until we reach that place of opening our heart, we are effectively human animals. We're concerned with our own lives, paying our own rent, looking after our own family, survival. And until we open our heart, we become human beings. then we become more aware of each other and the altruistic space around us, the giving, the compassion, and the open heart. And so the difference between being a human animal concerned with our own survival and a human being concerned with everybody is the open heart.
Is there, Richard, I don't want to hog all the neat questions here. Is there, but I'm going to ask this last one, then I'll back off. Is there, if you have a pain in this part of your body, does that indicate something, or does the body speak to you in ways that can be interpreted as to what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I wrote Your Body Speaks Your Mind, because the mind and the body are so deeply, intricately connected. As we saw, you know, you have a sad thought and you instantly have tears. There's a complete direct connection. And so in many ways, anything that we're not fully conscious of, i.e. we're repressing it, we're denying it, or we're ignoring it, different issues there may be, we'll find a way into the body. We'll find an expression in the body. And so what we can do is learn how to read the body. And it's very simple. I mean, the body language itself speaks most of it that we need to know by just understanding, deeply understanding the function of any particular part of the body. And then looking at that from a psycho-emotional point of view, that particular function, then we begin to get a link. You know, so for instance, our hands, what is the job of our hands? The function of our hands is to handle things and to move things and to do things. And so how are we handling our world? If there's pain in the hand, is there a conflict in how we're handling our world or being handled? And so we can apply this to any part of the body. You can effectively sort of, you know, you could go to any single part of the body and see what is its ultimate function, what is its purpose, and how does that relate to what's happening on a psycho-emotional level within me, and see the relationship. It doesn't mean to say we're going to end up in perfect health. What it does mean is that we get a deeper understanding of what's going on, and from there can begin to determine whether we need psychotherapy or medication or exercise or what the type of healing may be that we need, if we can begin to determine what the cause of the problem may be.
We have a question from our audience, from KL. Is it possible that concern for others can become a preoccupation, a trap?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ego can use and does use anything it can get its hold on and get its hand on. And so the ego can use our concern for other people as a way to get attention for ourselves, to become a martyr, to look at me, or to even avoid our own issues. Absolutely. We can become such a good Samaritan that we ignore ourselves completely. And we need to pay attention to ourselves as much as to other people. Having an open heart doesn't mean that we are a doormat and let everybody walk all over us and ignore ourselves in the process. Having an open heart means we're just as important to ourselves. Our own health is just as important. Our own well-being is just as important as other people's. But it does mean that we're not ignoring other people, that we're not necessarily always putting ourselves first.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to direct us back for a moment to the idea that increasing our potential for healing in what you're talking about. And I'd like to direct it toward a specific thing, because this will give, I think, the audience a good example. So let's say that you have somebody that you're working with, or, you know, in some way as a coach, or just, you know, here's an idea. Somebody with fibromyalgia. And how would they use the information in this great book to work on their, or be with their fibromyalgia, I guess is how I'd frame it?
Well, the way I work with people is, first off, you know, obviously they've got to be willing to look within themselves and not just be given a cure, or given a remedy, because that's often what people want, is just to be told what to do next to get better. And actually, understanding ourselves doesn't usually include that. What it means is, first of all, seeing when this particular, you know, fibromyalgia or any particular incident began. It's been seen through different research that generally speaking can take 2 years or more for a physical symptom to develop. So within what I'm saying is that look back over the past 2 years and see if there were places where incidences, issues that you repressed, ignored, or denied, and just swallowed back down. It may not be in the last 2 years, but there may be something that happened in the last 2 years that connected to an incident way much further back. You know, I've had people who go through stuff in childhood, but then don't become aware of this until they're in their 30s or 40s, because something then triggers that connection. So it may be something more recent, or it may be something from way back that is connected to something more recent. So first off, it's looking to see what issues were going on, beginning to accumulate within the body that you were not able to, you know, really deal with or fully acknowledge, whether it be grief or rage or whatever the difficulty. Were you able to really heal that, really acknowledge and accept that? So that's the starting point. The second point then is to look at the part of the body that's involved and to see what that function might be connected to. There's other things in the book as well, like the side of the body, left or right, and the different meanings each part of the body has. Each part of the body has a different function. And so you need to be able to see if there's one part of the body that's more affected than another. And if so, then what does that part of the body mean to you? What feelings do you have about it? What negative feelings do you have about it? And then also look at what, I know this is a really tough one, or can be, are there benefits to this? What are the benefits? What are the actual benefits for having something wrong with us? You know, it's incredibly subtle and very, very difficult to grasp about ourselves, and we often need help from somebody else to help us see this. But there can be very deep unconscious benefits to being sick or to having something wrong with us. Simple things like very often I had a friend, a woman I knew who had a home for people with chronic fatigue illness, that people could go there for weeks on end to be looked after and recover a little bit. And so she had six different people staying with her, and each one, as far as she understood, had a different food allergy. So each meal consisted of 6 different types of preparations very often. And one day she realized that she had given everybody the wrong dish. She'd actually got it wrong. She'd given them all the things they were allergic to. But it was too late. They were already eating by the time she realized. So she just sat back and watched, and none of them had an allergic reaction. And I think this is something very unconscious about us. I'm actually very interested in Dr. Joe Dispenza's work about the placebo effect and how the mind can basically create illness and dissolve illness. But it takes a lot of work. And so when we're looking at what the benefits of an illness may be, it can be very subtle. It may be about bringing attention to ourselves. It may be about wanting to appear different. It could be, different games of the ego, which are very, very subtle. But within the benefits, there's also, invariably, if we can find it, there's also a blessing. There's also a great blessing to the illness. And if we can find that blessing, then we're on the road to being able to heal it within ourselves.
Wow. It leaves you feeling mindful.
I have to say that, our aim should not be perfect health. And I say that because we are all going to die. We are impermanent. And it's not about being in the best tip-top, health all the time. It's about being in a state of awareness. No matter what is going on, we can be aware of it. We can live with it rather than it taking over our life. Attitude is huge here. We can have a debilitating illness. We can be disabled. We can be very, very sick. And we can still be completely aware that we are not the illness. Who we are is not defined by the illness. Okay, we don't have to become it. It is something we have to live with, maybe, but it's not us. It's not who we are in essence. And if we lose that essence to the illness, then we're a goner. But if we can maintain that awareness and mindfulness and an attitude of acceptance, as well as being completely okay within ourselves, you know, as long as you're okay within yourself, totally okay, then whatever's happening is just life in the body. It's not the whole of us.
Do you think terminal illness is a form of suicide?
Not at all. Not at all. I would never say that. No. You know, the body has its own rhythms and its own sense of being, and there may be there's a time for all of us, whether we die from a terminal illness or just termination. Doesn't matter. We are all terminal, one way or another. So having a terminal illness for me is simply a time for the body to go. Big deal. We're not the body. We're more than the body. The body does not define us. It does not say this is who I am. Where is I in the body? Can you find it? No. You can look everywhere. This is not, no, am I in the finger? Am I in the knee? No. So terminal illness is just simply time for the body to go. There'll be another one, or there'll be something else. I remember one of my very, very early teachers looking at me and just saying, you know, life is sweet, but death is even sweeter. Death is not a failure. Death is not the end. Death is simply transition. And the more we open ourselves to that big space, that big emptiness around us, the total fearlessness of whatever's happening, it becomes more of an invitation, more of a joy to discover whatever comes next, whatever it may be.
Do you see people privately?
I'm actually sort of in semi-retirement at the moment. I do absolutely do Skype and phone calls with people, but I tend not to see people personally anymore.
Okay, so if people wanted to ask you a question that's not something that's possible, that you would just direct them to your books?
Well, no, I mean, they can send it to a Skype session with me or phone call, no problem at all. Or the book, The Body Speaks the Mind, or if they want to know about meditation, Be the Change. You know, accessibility is still very simple. Just maybe not in person.
What website would you suggest they go to?
edandebshapiro.com.
SHAPIRO.
Yeah, Ed and A&D, edandebshapiro.com.
As we look at your site, is there any place you would suggest people start? Like Be the Change, that sounds totally intriguing.
I love Be the Change. For me, Be the Change how meditation can transform you in the world. To me, that is almost like whatever they call it, you know, the grand treatise that you write, because we spoke to so many meditation teachers and we got such a handle on, you know, amazingly, every single meditation teacher had a different experience, had a different aspect of it. And it was so important to hear that meditation is everything. It's not a fixed way of doing something. It's not you can't be good or bad at it. There's no rules. There's no set format. It just is as you want it to be. And it's just being. It's not doing anything special. It's not stopping the thinking or anything like that at all. It's just being in the present moment. Really, that's what meditation is, being in the present moment. So Be the Change is hugely important for us. The Body Speaks the Mind is the healing book. And then I even have my novel up there. I just published a new novel, the only novel I've ever written, Merging. And so you can get a copy from Amazon with that as well.
Wonderful. I see that we're just a couple minutes over the top of our show. It's been really, you know, enlightening, and I love this idea of really getting to what I call the pilot experiences and clearing that and getting into the quiet really
You know, we
busy now.
don't even have to clear anything first. We just go straight to the quiet. You don't have to clear anything. It'll go on its own.
Quiet is such a powerful state.
Yes.
Not always easy for me to achieve, but the quiet, once I'm in the quiet, it's like, wow, it's so quiet. It's wonderful. Thank you very much, Deb. It's been a wonderful show. And thanks, Sherry, and everybody else. Have a really excellent weekend. It's beautiful out here on the West Coast, so I'm happy to see the sun out. And everybody have a really great weekend. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.